My name is Emily, and at 26, I'm a driven career woman. Currently, I share a home with my husband, John. Lately, I've been contemplating starting a family soon, but John believes we should first focus on building a house and settling down before considering children. Therefore, we're diligently saving money for our future home. Despite my desire to start a family promptly, John remains adamant about his stance. Whenever I broach the topic of children, he reiterates the need to establish our home first. It's disheartening how he disregards my perspective. I resign myself to the idea that I must work harder to contribute to our savings. John and I have been married for a year now, and I've noticed a pattern in our relationship. He rarely considers my opinions, a trait that persisted from our dating days. Initially, I admired his strong convictions, but in marriage, mutual respect for each other's viewpoints is essential. I fear our marriage is faltering, especially with the influence of his parents, who live just a short drive away. John frequently visits his parents, citing reasons like cutting down on expenses. However, I've discovered he indulges in drinks with his coworkers, conveniently omitting these expenses from his frugal calculations. It's perplexing how stringent he is with me about saving, yet lenient with himself. His frugality extends to trivial matters like conserving hot water and turning off lights prematurely, directives he imposes solely on me. If only he extended the same standards to himself, perhaps our relationship wouldn't feel so one-sided. I would be seething with anger. However, he seems to believe it's acceptable to impose his ideas on others. Every week, when we visit his parents' house, a new problem surfaces. Hasn't it been a year since you got married? We want some good news soon. Well, we'll be able to see our grandchild, exclaims both my in-laws, putting immense pressure on me. Glancing at John, sitting beside me, I can tell he's glaring disapprovingly. It's evident he wants to say, "Don't say unnecessary things." While I share the desire for a child, John insists on building our own home first. It's entirely inappropriate for my in-laws to pressure me to have a child in this situation. Rather than advising John, who doesn't listen to my words at all regarding having children, my in-laws persist in pressuring me. Despite wanting to speak up, I'm silenced by their constant pressure for a grandchild. After the meal, John announces, "I'm going out for a smoke." "You know, Emily, it seems like you're working, but if you want to be a housewife, you should quit your job and work hard to be a good wife. Maybe that's why John isn't paying attention to you. It feels as though I'm being told I can't have children because I'm working." Despite my strong desire for children, John is the one not thinking about having them anytime soon. "Just quit your job already," urges my in-law. I retort, "It was John who asked me to work." "Why don't you talk to John first before constantly lecturing me?" Expressing my anger, I continue, "When it comes to having children, I want them too. But it's John who stubbornly refuses to listen to me until we have our own home. Instead of nagging at me, why don't you make sure you tell your son the truth?" My words leave my in-laws in a state of shock. I excused myself with a simple apology and left the table, making my way towards the entrance. The anger within me extended to John, who leisurely smoked by the entrance. Without saying a word, I climbed into the car, and he followed suit, casually remarking, "Hey, are you leaving already?" Knowing he would never disclose the truth to his parents, I grew weary of the various things my in-laws constantly told me. I declared that I wouldn't be visiting my in-laws' house anymore, and John widened his eyes in surprise. "Why not? We can save on food expenses, right? You also want a home soon and children, don't you?" he questioned. Fed up with the continuous impositions from both him and my in-laws, I snapped back. "If it's about saving, I've told you many times that we would save more if you stopped going to drinking parties or smoking. Instead of driving to your parents' house just to save the cost of one meal, why don't you save in that way? Everyone needs a break." Expressing my frustration, I continued, "You keep imposing things on me, like not using hot water and turning off the lights by 10 p.m. You think we can save money without sacrificing anything. If I have to go through all this trouble alone, then I don't need a home. I'm fed up with this. You never sacrifice anything yourself, but you're okay with imposing it on others. He seemed to downplay the situation, saying it's not a big deal. But I countered, no, it is a big deal. How much patience do you think I've had all this time? Moreover, I was infuriated by his pretense in front of his parents, making it appear as if I were the reason we couldn't have grandchildren. I'm tired of being the only one asked to have grandchildren. It's not me who doesn't want children, it's John. I've been saying it for a long time. I want children soon, so please stop being so angry. Seeing John struggle to deal with my unusual anger brought a slight sense of satisfaction, but it didn't resolve everything. Unsure of what to do next, I gazed out of the car window, ignoring John. A turning point for us came a month later when one of my relatives, my father's brother, passed away. With several pieces of land, a luxurious mansion, and a lavish lifestyle, my uncle's passing became a revelation for John. Impressive. I didn't know you had such a remarkable relative, he remarked a few days later. Upon receiving news about my uncle's inheritance, I decided to discuss the details with the lawyer in our apartment. Recognizing that it was a matter exclusively related to me and had no bearing on John, I politely asked him to leave the room, especially since he seemed uneasy about the concept of inheritance. I wanted to spare him any potential trouble that could arise if he got involved. After about 3 hours of listening to the lawyer explain the intricacies of the inheritance, I thanked him and asked him to leave. However, to my surprise, John, who had been at home earlier, was nowhere to be found. Assuming he had probably stepped out to avoid interrupting my conversation with the lawyer, I started preparing dinner. Little did I know, 3 months later, John approached me, expressing, "There's something I want to show you," and took me for a drive. Excitement welled up as we entered a residential area, but my confusion grew when the car parked in front of a certain house. John then pressed the intercom, and my in-laws emerged from inside. However, it was evident that this house was not their home. "You finally made it. When are you and Emily moving over here?" "We're thinking of moving in by the end of this month," announced my father-in-law. He continued, blaming me for being a selfish daughter-in-law and accused me of always shifting the responsibility for having children onto John. I shot a disapproving glare at John, bewildered as to why he brought me here when I had clearly stated I wouldn't visit my in-laws anymore. Searching for an explanation, I questioned him, and he simply shrugged, stating, "Don't get so angry. If we live together, we can bridge the gap between you and my mom. Besides, this will be our new home from now on, so you should cooperate on the children issue as well. Live together." His revelation left me in disbelief. I hadn't agreed to living with them, especially after explicitly stating that I wouldn't go to my in-laws' house anymore. The situation was further complicated by the nature of the house. As John disclosed, it's a 2-family house. My plan was always for us to live with my parents eventually. "So, what's the problem with living in a 2-family house now?" he asked. The question lingered in the air as I mulled over the situation. Living in a 2-family house seemed to be a significant issue, especially when considering our savings. According to our financial situation, building such a splendid new house was seemingly impossible. I couldn't fathom how John managed it. "My dad and I chipped in the money, so our savings are empty, but it's fine, right?" John casually mentioned. His nonchalant attitude perplexed me. He continued, "I heard your uncle's inheritance was worth $690,000. So, if you use that money to repay us for the cost of the 2-family house, it should be fine, huh?" I was taken aback. The idea that he believed my inheritance should be used to fund the house without my consent baffled me. Even if I were to inherit the money, how I used it should be my decision, not his. Frustrated by my rejection of their proposal, John reached into his bag and pulled out a pre-filled divorce form with his name on it. "Your money is our money. If you don't like living together, let's get a divorce," he declared. I took the divorce form from his hand, expressing, "Fine, if living together is the alternative, then divorce is the better choice." Firmly placing the divorce form into my bag, I turned my back on him and my in-laws, who looked stunned. Ignoring their reactions, I continued, "By the way, I renounced my uncle's inheritance. John froze with a bewildered expression. Without waiting for a response, I took a bus and headed home to our apartment. Upon arrival, I promptly filled in my name on the divorce form, which already had John's name on it. I then submitted the divorce papers and immediately purchased cardboard boxes at a home improvement store to start preparing for the move. Recognizing that I couldn't handle the move alone, I hired a moving company. Fortunately, it turned out that not many moves were happening during this season, allowing for a quick relocation. As I packed for the move, a commotion outside the front door indicated John's return. I had the chain lock on, and I addressed him, "Sorry, I had the chain lock on. I don't know what you might do when you're so angry. Besides, I need to finish packing for the move. Could you stay at your parents' house for a few days?" "I won't accept a divorce," John declared, widening my eyes in surprise. I reminded him, "But you handed me the divorce form, didn't you? If you sign the divorce papers, that means you agree to the divorce, you know." Astonished, I questioned whether he truly understood the implications of what he had done. He frowned, appearing frustrated, but quickly changed the subject. "Why would you give up on a $690,000 inheritance?" "Normally, you'd inherit it," he questioned. It seemed he had overheard some details about the inheritance but hadn't grasped the full story. Likely, after learning about the $690,000 inheritance, he had rushed to my in-laws, and they impulsively purchased the two-family house without considering the consequences. I explained, "The inheritance discussion came to me because there wasn't anyone else to inherit it. My uncle had 3 sons, 2 daughters, a wife, and grandchildren. However, all of them renounced the inheritance, so it ended up coming to me. My uncle did have $690,000, but he had to demolish his mansion, spend a lot on maintaining his land, and had plenty of debt. I realized that renouncing the inheritance was a better choice than inheriting it." John was in disbelief, exclaiming, "No way. So even if you had inherited $690,000, you're saying there wouldn't have been much money left? That's fraud." I explained that the lawyer and I had a proper discussion about it, but someone had eavesdropped and left before hearing the whole story. My words left him speechless, and perhaps he finally realized he was in the wrong. However, I asserted, "It's too late now. You betrayed my trust. We've already filed for a divorce, and you and I are no longer a couple. Why are you suddenly saying you don't want a divorce now? If you truly didn't want a divorce, you should have followed me right away when I returned, shouldn't you?" I reminded him of the consequences of his actions, emphasizing that his mother's opinion about the divorce didn't change the fact that he and his father had invested in the two-family house. His mother's lack of experience with work didn't allow her to fully appreciate the value of money. I sighed, realizing it wasn't my role to listen to his complaints about his parents. If we were still a married couple, I might have entertained the conversation. However, I reminded him, "You haven't submitted the divorce papers yet, have you?" He pleaded, "If you do it now, we can still be a couple. Please, let's live together in that two-family house." "I've already submitted the divorce papers, so it's pointless now," I replied. His expression slumped in front of the apartment door, appearing bewildered and lost. While I believed he brought this upon himself, I couldn't let him linger outside forever. Briefly considering sending him away, I realized I had no time to waste, so I continued with my preparations for the move. After a while, he was gone, and I proceeded with the move, informing my workplace about the divorce, especially since my boss had acted as our mediator. Feeling obligated to apologize for the divorce, I also shared the news with my coworkers who had been invited to our wedding during lunch break. Unexpectedly, he burst into my department in front of my coworkers, claiming, "It's absurd that you're talking about the divorce. I wish you hadn't mentioned it." He disclosed the situation in his department, assuming I had inherited an estate and suggested buying a two-family house. When faced with the choice between divorce or living together, I chose divorce. Consequently, he found himself being avoided by everyone. I even received sympathy from colleagues. Eventually, he quit his job. During this time, a male colleague confessed to me, saying, "I've actually liked you for a long time. I hope to build a home where we can communicate as a couple and work things out together."